After Johnny Depp helped the desperate girl get treatment, he thought their struggle was finally over. But little did any of them know the real challenge of this brave child was yet to come, one that would test Johnny Depp's true courage for her. Before we dive into part 2 of this story, comment where you're watching from, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Johnny Depp made his way through the quiet hospital corridors, the sterile lights illuminating the path to Sonia's room. His mind had been preoccupied with worry about her condition throughout the day, despite the urgent appointments he had attended. As he neared her room, he saw Miss Abigail stepping out, a tired smile on her face. "Mr. Depp," she greeted him softly, "Sonia's been asking for Captain Jack all day. She's been very weak and sleeping on and off since the surgery, but she'll be so happy to see you." Johnny nodded gratefully and entered the room. Sonia lay resting in her hospital bed, the pirate hat from their movie night slightly askew on her head. Her face was pale against the white hospital sheets, but her eyes brightened when she saw him. The golden coin he had given her rested on the bedside table, catching the dim evening light. "How are you feeling, love?" Johnny asked gently, settling into the chair beside her bed. Sonia's usual bright smile seemed strained as she admitted, "I have a terrible headache, Captain Jack, and it's hard to breathe properly." Her voice was weak, barely above a whisper. Johnny tried to reassure her, suggesting these might be normal post-surgery symptoms, but something about her labored breathing and pallid complexion triggered a deeper concern within him. He maintained a calm exterior, not wanting to frighten her, but his instincts told him something wasn't right. "Well, you've been through quite an adventure today," he said, forcing a smile. "It's normal to feel a bit rough after such a big battle, but you're strong, remember, a true pirate." Sonia nodded weakly, her eyes never leaving Johnny's face. "Will you stay with me for a while, Captain Jack?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Of course, love," Johnny replied, reaching out to hold her small hand. "I'm not going anywhere." Despite her obvious exhaustion, Sonia reached out to hug Johnny, her small arms wrapping around him with surprising strength. "Thank you for everything, Captain Jack," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion and gratitude for all he'd done. Mid-embrace, Sonia suddenly started coughing severely. The cough was deep and concerning, rattling her small frame. Her breathing became increasingly labored and irregular, the sound harsh and frightening in the quiet room. Johnny's expression shifted from concern to alarm as he realized this wasn't normal post-operative recovery. He gently helped Sonia lie back against her pillows while reaching for the nurse call button, his movements calm but urgent. "It's all right, love," he soothed, trying to keep the worry from his voice. "We'll get someone to help you feel better." A nurse hurried in, quickly assessing Sonia's condition. Seeing the severity of her symptoms, the labored breathing, the persistent cough, and Sonia's obvious distress, she immediately paged Dr. Marvey for an emergency consultation. Johnny stood back, allowing the nurse to work but keeping his eyes fixed on Sonia. His mind raced with worry as he watched her struggle for breath, knowing this was far more serious than typical post-surgery discomfort. "Hang in there, Sonia," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "Help is on the way." The minutes seemed to stretch endlessly as they waited for Dr. Marvey to arrive. Johnny paced the small room, his eyes darting between Sonia and the door, willing the doctor to appear. He tried to maintain a calm demeanor for Sonia's sake, but inside he was battling a rising tide of fear and helplessness. Dr. Marvey arrived promptly, his face serious as he began examining Sonia. He listened to her breathing with his stethoscope, checked her vital signs, and reviewed her recent post-surgery charts. His expression grew increasingly grave with each passing moment. The doctor asked Johnny and Miss Abigail, who had rushed in upon hearing the commotion, to step aside for a moment. In low, urgent tones, he confirmed their earlier fears. The cancer had spread further than initially detected during surgery. The delay in treatment before Johnny found her had allowed it to advance significantly throughout her system. "I'm sorry," Dr. Marvey said, his voice heavy with regret, "but our facility, while capable of handling routine cancer cases, lacks the specialized equipment and expertise needed for such an advanced case. We may not be able to provide the level of care Sonia needs. Johnny felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath him. He glanced at Miss Abigail, who had gone pale, her hand covering her mouth in shock. "What are you saying, Doctor?" Johnny asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What does this mean for Sonia?" Dr. Marvey's expression was grave as he replied, "It means her condition is far more serious than we initially thought. Without specialized treatment, her chances are not good." From her bed, Sonia had been watching their hushed conversation intently. Though weak, her voice carried clearly across the room as she asked the question that broke Johnny's heart. "Will I die?" Her small fingers clutched the pirate coin tightly as she awaited an answer. Johnny's heart clenched at her words, but his resolve strengthened. He wouldn't let this be the end of Sonia's story. Before the doctor could respond, Johnny moved swiftly to her bedside, knowing he needed to act quickly. "No, love," he said firmly, kneeling beside her bed. "We've come too far to give up now. Pirates don't surrender, remember?" His mind was already forming a plan, remembering a connection that might save Sonia's life. Johnny turned to Miss Abigail, his voice steady despite the turmoil he felt inside. "Can you stay with Sonia for a moment? I need to make an important phone call." Miss Abigail nodded, moving to take Johnny's place at Sonia's bedside. Johnny gave Sonia's hand a reassuring squeeze before stepping out into the hallway. In the corridor, Johnny pulled out his phone and dialed Dr. James Morrison, a highly respected oncologist he had met at a charity gala months ago. Morrison was known for treating seemingly hopeless cancer cases among celebrities and had access to cutting-edge treatments not available in most hospitals. As the phone rang, Johnny paced the hallway, his free hand running through his hair in agitation. When Dr. Morrison finally answered, Johnny wasted no time in explaining Sonia's situation. "James, it's Johnny Depp," he said urgently. "I need your help. There's a little girl here with advanced cancer, and the local hospital can't handle her case. I remember you mentioning some experimental treatments at your facility." Dr. Morrison listened carefully as Johnny outlined Sonia's condition, occasionally asking for clarification on specific details. "Whatever it costs," Johnny insisted, his voice carrying both authority and desperation. "I'll cover everything. We just need to move quickly." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Johnny held his breath, silently willing Dr. Morrison to agree. Finally, the oncologist spoke. "All right, Johnny. Bring her to my facility immediately. I'll have everything ready for her arrival. But I must warn you, the treatment is experimental and extremely expensive." "Money is not an issue," Johnny replied without hesitation. "We'll be there as soon as possible. Thank you, James. You might be saving her life." As he ended the call, Johnny felt a mix of relief and nervous anticipation. He had a plan now, a chance to save Sonia, but he knew the road ahead would be challenging and uncertain. Johnny returned to Sonia's room with renewed determination. He found her clutching her pirate coin, tears still fresh on her cheeks, but her eyes filled with trust as she looked at him. "All right, First Mate Sonia," he said, slipping into his Jack Sparrow persona. "We've got a new adventure ahead of us. We're going to sail to a different port, where a very special doctor will help you fight this battle." Sonia's eyes widened with a mix of fear and excitement. "A new adventure?" she asked, her voice weak but curious. Johnny nodded, sitting on the edge of her bed. "That's right, love. We're going to a different hospital in another city. It's a bit far from here, which means you'll be away from your orphanage friends for a while, but this is our best chance to make you feel better. What do you say? Are you up for it?" Sonia hesitated for a moment, then nodded bravely. "Aye, aye, Captain," she whispered, managing a small smile. Kneeling beside her bed, Johnny spoke in his Jack Sparrow voice. "One more adventure, love, the bravest one yet." His tone shifted to serious as he continued. "I need you to trust me one more time. This isn't just chance. Us meeting wasn't just coincidence. We're meant to win this battle together. Someone of higher power had put this in place." Miss Abigail watched the exchange with tears in her eyes, moved by Johnny's dedication and Sonia's unwavering faith in him. She quickly began gathering Sonia's few belongings, including the pirate hat and coin, preparing for the transfer. "Mr. Depp," she said softly, I can't thank you enough for all you're doing. But are you sure about this? The cost, the time? Johnny cut her off gently. Ms. Abigail, please, this is what needs to be done. Sonia deserves every chance we can give her. As they prepared for the transfer, Johnny coordinated with Dr. Morrison's team and the local hospital staff. Within hours, a medical transport was arranged, equipped to handle any emergencies during the journey. As the nurses prepared Sonia for the trip, Johnny noticed her growing anxiety. He sat beside her, holding her hand. Remember, love, he said softly, you're the bravest pirate I know, and I'll be right there with you every step of the way. Sonia nodded, clutching her pirate coin tightly. Promise you won't leave me, Captain Jack? She asked, her voice small and frightened. I promise, Johnny replied solemnly. We're in this together, First Mate Sonia. Now let's set sail for our next great adventure. As they wheeled Sonia out of the room, Johnny felt a mix of hope and trepidation. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but he was determined to see it through no matter what challenges lay ahead. The transfer was arranged with remarkable speed, thanks to Johnny's influence and Dr. Morrison's intervention. A medical transport vehicle was prepared, equipped to handle any emergencies during the journey. As they prepared to leave, Johnny insisted that Ms. Abigail accompany them, knowing her presence would provide additional comfort and support for Sonia. The night air was cool as they loaded Sonia into the transport. Johnny helped her settle in, making sure she was as comfortable as possible. Sonia drifted in and out of sleep in the back, still wearing her pirate hat despite her obvious discomfort. As they drove through the night, the city lights faded behind them, replaced by the darkness of the open road. Johnny sat beside Sonia, holding her hand, while Ms. Abigail sat across from them, her worried gaze never leaving the little girl's face. During a quiet moment, when Sonia had drifted off to sleep, Johnny confided in Ms. Abigail about his feelings. It breaks my heart, he admitted softly, watching Sonia sleep. There are so many children out there like her, needing help while people look away. If I could trade all my fame and money to save children like her, I'd do it in a heartbeat. The sincerity in his voice moved Ms. Abigail deeply. She reached over and patted his hand, understanding that this experience had changed him profoundly. At least you can help her, she whispered, and Johnny nodded, his eyes never leaving Sonia's sleeping form. As the hours passed, Johnny found himself reflecting on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. The scared little girl clutching his leg outside the hotel seemed like a lifetime ago. He became increasingly convinced that their meeting wasn't mere coincidence but a sign from a higher power. Someone watching over Sonia who had put him in her path at exactly the right moment. This realization strengthened his resolve and faith in Sonia's recovery. Her survival already seemed miraculous, from her initial strength in seeking help to finding him at that precise moment. Johnny silently vowed to do whatever it took to see her through this battle, to give her the chance at life and adventure that every child deserves. The journey continued through the night, each mile bringing them closer to their last hope for Sonia's recovery. As the first light of dawn began to break on the horizon, Johnny felt a mixture of exhaustion and anticipation. He knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he was committed to facing them alongside Sonia, determined to see her through to a brighter future. They arrived at Dr. Morrison's state-of-the-art facility just as dawn began to break. The modern building rose impressively against the lightening sky, its windows gleaming with promise. Johnny felt a surge of hope as he gazed at the facility, knowing that within its walls lay Sonia's best chance for survival. Dr. Morrison personally greeted them at the entrance, his presence carrying both authority and compassion. He immediately began assessing Sonia's condition while his team prepared for treatment. "Johnny," Dr. Morrison said, shaking his hand firmly, "I'm glad you made it safely. Let's get Sonia settled and then we can discuss the treatment plan." As the medical team carefully transferred Sonia from the transport to a hospital bed, Johnny noticed how small and fragile she looked against the stark white sheets. Her pirate hat had slipped off during the journey, and he gently placed it back on her head, earning a weak smile from the exhausted child. Once Sonia was settled in her room, Dr. Morrison pulled Johnny aside to outline an aggressive treatment plan. He carefully explained each step and the risks involved, his voice low and serious. "Johnny," Dr. Morrison said, his expression grave, "I want to be clear about this. The treatment is experimental and extremely aggressive. There are significant risks involved, and the cost is astronomical. Are you absolutely sure you want to proceed?" Johnny's response was immediate and firm. "Whatever it costs," he stated without hesitation, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Let's get started immediately." Dr. Morrison nodded approvingly at his dedication, immediately setting his team in motion. As the doctor left to make final preparations, Johnny returned to Sonia's bedside, where Ms. Abigail sat holding the little girl's hand. "How are you feeling, first mate?" Johnny asked gently, using his Jack Sparrow voice to bring a smile to Sonia's tired face. "Tired, Captain," Sonia replied weakly, "but ready for the next adventure." Johnny smiled, his heart swelling with admiration for her bravery. "That's my girl," he said softly. "Now the doctors are going to start helping you very soon. It might be a bit scary, but remember, you're the bravest pirate I know." As the medical team began to prepare Sonia for her first round of treatment, Johnny felt a mix of hope and anxiety. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he was determined to stand by Sonia's side every step of the way, ready to face whatever storms lay ahead in their greatest adventure yet. Johnny sat with her, explaining gently that she'd be under anesthesia for several days. He tried to make it sound like another grand adventure, though his heart ached at seeing her so frightened. "You see, love," he said, using his Jack Sparrow voice, "you're about to embark on a secret mission. The doctors are going to put you to sleep, and while you're dreaming of grand adventures, they'll be fighting off the bad guys in your body." Sonia listened intently, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Will it hurt?" she asked in a small voice. Johnny squeezed her hand gently. "The doctors will make sure you're comfortable," he assured her, "and when you wake up, you'll be one step closer to feeling better." "I'll be right here when you wake up," he promised solemnly, just like a captain waiting for his first mate to return from a dangerous mission. His words brought a small smile to Sonia's tired face. They shared one final hug before the nurses came to take her. Sonia clutched her pirate coin tightly in one hand, while holding Johnny's hand with the other, drawing strength from both. As the nurses began to wheel Sonia away, she looked back at Johnny, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "I'll make you proud, Captain Jack," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Johnny maintained his composure as Sonia was wheeled away, not letting his brave face slip until the treatment room doors closed behind her. Only then did he allow his shoulders to sag with the weight of his worry. Ms. Abigail, who had been watching silently, placed a comforting hand on Johnny's shoulder. "She's in good hands," she said softly, "and she has your strength to draw from." Johnny nodded, taking a deep breath to steady himself. "She's the strongest person I know," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "If anyone can beat this, it's Sonia." As they settled into the waiting area, Johnny found himself reflecting on the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them to this moment. He silently renewed his promise to Sonia, vowing to do whatever it took to see her through this battle and give her the chance at life she deserved. He became convinced their meeting wasn't mere coincidence, but a sign from a higher power. Someone watching over Sonia, who put him in her path at exactly the right moment. As he sat there, the quiet hum of the hospital around him, Johnny felt a sense of peace wash over him. He closed his eyes, offering a silent prayer for Sonia's recovery. "I don't know if you're listening," he whispered, "but thank you for bringing Sonia into my life. Please, give her the strength to fight this battle. She deserves a chance at a full, happy life." This realization strengthened his resolve and faith in Sonia's recovery. Her survival already seemed miraculous, from her initial strength in seeking help to finding him at that precise moment. Opening his eyes, Johnny noticed Ms. Abigail watching him with a gentle smile. "You know," she said softly, "I've always believed that things happen for a reason. Sonia finding you, it's like a miracle." Johnny nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "It certainly feels that way," he agreed, "and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure this miracle has a happy ending." As the hours ticked by, Johnny found himself making plans, not just for Sonia's immediate care but for her future. He began to envision ways he could use his resources and influence to help not just Sonia, but other children in similar situations. Finally, exhausted but hopeful, Johnny knew he needed to attend to his neglected obligations. He turned to Ms. Abigail, his expression serious. "I need to step out for a while to handle some business matters," he explained, "but I'll be back as soon as I can. Will you stay with her?" Ms. Abigail nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Of course, Mr. Depp, I'll be here." Before leaving, Johnny made arrangements with the hospital staff to contact him immediately if there was any change in Sonia's condition. As Johnny walked down the quiet hospital corridor late at night, his thoughts lingered on Sonia and her fight for survival. The soft hum of medical equipment and the muted conversations of night staff were the only sounds breaking the stillness. His footsteps echoed softly on the polished floor as he made his way towards the exit. Passing an open glass door, his steps faltered. Inside the softly lit room, he noticed a young boy around 12 years old awake in his hospital bed. The boy's bald head and thin frame were clear signs of his ongoing battle with cancer. An IV stand stood sentinel beside the bed, a silent reminder of the constant medical intervention required. The boy's parents were asleep nearby, his mother curled up on a small sofa, and his father slouched in a waiting chair. Their exhaustion was palpable, a silent testament to the relentless toll of this fight. Bags under their eyes and worry lines etched on their faces spoke volumes about the sleepless nights and endless days of concern. The sight was profoundly moving for Johnny, a stark reminder of the countless children fighting similar battles and the toll it takes on their families. He thought of Sonia, of her bravery and resilience, and of all the other children like her who faced such daunting challenges every day. The boy, noticing Johnny in the doorway, froze in surprise. His eyes widened as recognition dawned, but he stayed silent, careful not to wake his parents. His expression was a mix of disbelief and awe, as if he couldn't believe the Hollywood star was standing there looking at him. Johnny, sensing the boy's excitement, smiled softly. Without a word, he lifted his hand and performed a crisp "Aye, aye, Captain" salute, channeling his signature Jack Sparrow charm. The boy's face broke into a grin, his eyes shining with a mixture of joy and wonder. He responded with a shy, enthusiastic wave, clearly thrilled by the brief, unexpected encounter. Johnny held the salute for a moment longer, his expression warm and encouraging, before continuing down the corridor. As he walked away, he reflected on the boy's courage and resilience. The moment reinforced a painful yet motivating truth. No child should have to fight this battle alone. It renewed his resolve to be there for Sonia, ensuring she never felt abandoned in her journey. This brief interaction had a profound impact on Johnny. He realized that his presence, even for just a moment, could bring a spark of joy to a child facing such difficult circumstances. It wasn't just about the medical care or the financial support. It was about being there, showing up, and letting these brave children know they weren't alone in their fight. As he reached the hospital exit, Johnny paused, looking back down the corridor. He thought about Sonia, about the boy he'd just seen, and about all the other children fighting similar battles. In that moment, he made a silent vow to do more, not just for Sonia, but for all the children he could reach. With a renewed sense of purpose, Johnny stepped out into the cool night air. The experience had changed him, opening his eyes to a world of need he had previously overlooked, and he was determined to make a difference, starting with one brave little girl but not ending there. His mind was already formulating plans, ways he could use his influence, his resources, and his time to bring hope and support to children battling illness. 2 days later, Johnny found himself in the middle of a business meeting, discussing upcoming film projects. Despite his best efforts to focus, his thoughts kept drifting back to Sonia and her ongoing treatment. He had been receiving regular updates from Ms. Abigail and the hospital staff, but the waiting was taking its toll. Suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Excusing himself, Johnny stepped out of the conference room to answer the call. His heart raced as he saw Dr. Morrison's name on the screen. "Hello, Dr. Morrison," he answered, his voice tense with anticipation. "How is she?" Dr. Morrison's voice came through, calm but with a hint of excitement. "Johnny, I have good news. Sonia is responding well to the treatment. Her latest tests show significant improvement, and we're planning to wake her up soon. Relief washed over Johnny like a tidal wave. He leaned against the wall, closing his eyes as he processed the news. That's wonderful, he managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. When can I see her? We'll be bringing her out of sedation in a few hours, Dr. Morrison replied. If you can make it here by then, you should be able to see her when she wakes up. Without hesitation, Johnny excused himself from the meeting and rushed to the hospital. His heart raced with equal parts excitement and anxiety as he made his way to the hospital with his chauffeur. As they drove, Johnny's mind was filled with thoughts of Sonia. He remembered her brave smile, her unwavering trust in him, and the strength she had shown throughout this ordeal. He silently thanked whatever higher power had brought them together and given Sonia this chance at life. The city passed by in a blur as Johnny's chauffeur navigated the traffic. With each mile, Johnny felt a mixture of hope and nervousness building within him. He knew that Sonia's fight was far from over, but this was a significant step forward. As Johnny's chauffeur pulled up to the hospital entrance, something caught his eye that made his heart sink. A media reporter with a large camera was standing right at the entry, clearly on the lookout for a story. Johnny realized that his frequent visits to the hospital must have caught someone's attention, and now the press was sniffing around for the next big headline. Taking a deep breath, Johnny steeled himself for what was to come. He knew he couldn't avoid the reporter entirely, but he was determined to protect Sonia's privacy and keep her story out of the public eye. As he stepped out of the car, the reporter's eyes lit up with recognition. The man quickly approached, his camera already raised and recording. "Mr. Depp," the reporter called out, his voice eager. "What brings you to the hospital? Are you here visiting someone? Is everything all right?" Johnny hesitated, his mind racing as he tried to find a way to deflect the reporter's questions without lying outright. He knew that any hint of a story would only bring more media attention, something Sonia and the hospital staff didn't need right now. "I'm here on personal business," Johnny replied calmly, trying to keep his tone neutral. "I'd appreciate it if you could respect my privacy at this time." The reporter, however, was not so easily deterred. "Is it related to a new role? Are you researching for an upcoming film?" Johnny felt a surge of frustration, but he kept his composure. He knew that losing his temper would only make the situation worse and potentially create a bigger story. Johnny Depp knew he couldn't use this now. Sonia needed peace, not some outrageous media attention gathering outside the hospital. He decided to take a different approach. "Listen," Johnny said, his voice low and serious. "I know you're just doing your job, but I need you to turn off the camera for a moment. Can we talk off the record?" The cameraman, a young man likely in his 20s, hesitated for a moment before lowering his camera. Curiosity had replaced the eager look in his eyes. Johnny took a deep breath before continuing. "I'm here for a little girl I'm helping," he explained, his voice filled with sincerity. "She's very sick, and she needs peace and privacy right now. It's important that no one knows about this. Can you understand that?" The cameraman's expression softened as he listened to Johnny's words. A look of shame crossed his face, and he nodded slowly. I'm sorry, Mr. Depp," he said, his voice quiet. "I didn't think about it that way. You're right, celebrities need their privacy too, especially in situations like this." Johnny felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you for understanding," he said, offering a small smile. "I appreciate your discretion." The cameraman nodded again, more firmly this time. "I won't report this to my boss," he assured Johnny. "No one will know you're here. I hope the little girl gets better soon." Johnny thanked him once more before hurrying inside the hospital, grateful for the young man's understanding and hoping that his trust wouldn't be misplaced. Entering Sonia's room, Johnny was struck by the visible improvement in her appearance. Even unconscious, she looked more peaceful, her color better than it had been since he first met her. The pirate hat rested on her bedside table, alongside the golden coin. He took his place beside her bed, determined to be there when she opened her eyes just as he promised. Hours passed as he maintained his vigil, occasionally speaking to her softly about future adventures they'd share. You know, first mate Sonia, he whispered, holding her small hand in his. When you're all better, we'll go on a real adventure. Maybe we'll sail to a tropical island or explore ancient ruins. What do you think about that? As he spoke, Johnny noticed a slight flutter of Sonia's eyelids. His heart raced with anticipation, but he kept his voice calm and steady. That's it, love, he encouraged gently. Time to wake up. Your crew is waiting for you. Slowly, Sonia's eyes began to open. At first, her gaze was unfocused, confusion evident on her face. Then her eyes settled on Johnny, and a small, weak smile spread across her lips. Captain Jack? She murmured, her voice hoarse from disuse. Johnny felt a lump form in his throat, overwhelmed with emotion. Welcome back, first mate, he said, his voice thick. You've been on quite the adventure. Sonia's smile widened slightly. Did we win? She asked, her words barely above a whisper. Johnny nodded, blinking back tears. We're winning, love. You're the bravest pirate I've ever known. As Sonia became more alert, Johnny helped her sip some water and adjusted her bed so she could sit up slightly. He placed the pirate hat gently on her head, careful not to disturb any of the medical equipment. There, he said with a smile. Now you look like a proper pirate captain. Sonia giggled weakly, the sound music to Johnny's ears. It was a small moment, but it filled him with hope for her recovery and the future that lay ahead. As Johnny and Sonia were sharing a quiet moment, Dr. Morrison entered the room, his face bearing a smile that immediately set Johnny's heart at ease. The doctor approached Sonia's bed, his eyes twinkling with genuine joy. Well, well, Dr. Morrison said warmly. Look who's awake. How are you feeling, Sonia? Sonia managed a small smile. Tired, she admitted, but better, I think. Dr. Morrison nodded, then turned to Johnny. Mr. Depp, could I have a word with you outside? Johnny felt a momentary pang of anxiety, but the doctor's relaxed demeanor reassured him. He squeezed Sonia's hand gently. I'll be right back, first mate. Don't go sailing off without me. Once they were in the hallway, Dr. Morrison's smile widened. I have incredible news, he said, his voice filled with excitement. The treatment has been successful beyond our wildest expectations. While follow-up treatments and medication will be necessary, the worst is over. Johnny felt his knees go weak with relief. He leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths to steady himself. Are you sure? He asked, hardly daring to believe it. Dr. Morrison nodded emphatically. I've never seen such an advanced case respond so well to treatment. Given the severity of Sonia's cancer, her survival is nothing short of miraculous. In my entire career, I've never witnessed anything like it. Johnny nodded silently, his earlier faith confirmed. He thought back to that chance meeting outside the hotel, the series of events that led them here. It truly did seem like more than mere coincidence. What happens now? Johnny asked, his mind already racing with plans for Sonia's future. Dr. Morrison outlined the follow-up care plan, which included regular treatments and medication to ensure the cancer didn't return. Johnny immediately agreed to fund all ongoing care, his commitment to Sonia's health unwavering. Thank you, Dr. Morrison, Johnny said earnestly, shaking the doctor's hand, for everything you've done. As they re-entered the room, Sonia looked up expectantly. Johnny couldn't help but smile at the sight of her, still wearing the slightly too large pirate hat. Well, first mate, he said, slipping back into his Jack Sparrow voice, it seems we've weathered the storm. The doctor here says you're going to be just fine. Sonia's eyes widened with hope. Really? She asked, looking between Johnny and Dr. Morrison. Dr. Morrison nodded, his smile gentle. Really, Sonia, you've been incredibly brave, and your body has responded wonderfully to the treatment. We still have some work to do, but you're going to be okay. As the doctor explained the next steps in simpler terms for Sonia to understand, Johnny watched her face light up with joy and relief. He felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him, knowing that this brave little girl would now have the chance to grow up, to have the adventures and experiences she deserved. Johnny sat beside Sonia, who was propped up in her hospital bed, her pirate hat perched jauntily on her head. What do you say we surprise your crew? he asked with a smile, pulling out his phone. Sonia's eyes lit up with excitement. Can we really? I miss them so much. Johnny nodded, dialing the number for the orphanage. After a brief conversation with Ms. Abigail to set up the surprise, he switched to video call mode and angled the phone so both he and Sonia were in frame. The screen filled with the familiar face of Mr. Peter, one of the workers at the orphanage. Behind him, a group of children crowded in, their excitement spilling over as they waved and called out, "Sonia!" Sonia beamed, her voice steady as she said, "Hi everyone, I miss you all so much." The children cheered, holding up hand-drawn signs with messages like, "We love you, Sonia, and our pirate hero." Mr. Peter smiled warmly, his gratitude clear. "Sonia, you've shown us all what courage looks like, and Mr. Depp, thank you for everything." Johnny, switching to his Captain Jack Sparrow voice, grinned and said, "Listen up, you scallywags. This brave pirate is your finest mate, and she'll be back at the helm in no time." The children giggled and cheered, peppering Sonia with questions about her adventures and when she'd be coming home. Sonia answered as best she could, her face glowing with happiness at seeing her friends. As the call went on, Johnny noticed Sonia starting to tire, though she was clearly trying to hide it. He gently intervened. "All right, crew, I think it's time for our brave first mate to get some rest. But we'll talk again soon, aye?" The children reluctantly said their goodbyes, each one telling Sonia how much they missed her and couldn't wait for her return. As the screen went dark, Johnny looked at Sonia, his voice soft. "You've got quite the crew, love. They'll always be with you." Sonia nodded, clutching her pirate coin with determination. "And so will you, Captain Jack." Johnny felt a lump form in his throat at her words. "Always, Sonia, always." As Sonia settled back against her pillows, clearly exhausted but happy, Johnny couldn't help but feel a sense of completeness. He had started this journey thinking he was helping a little girl, but in reality, Sonia had given him something priceless, a reminder of what truly mattered in life. Dr. Morrison returned later that day to explain the path ahead. Regular checkups, medication and monitoring to ensure Sonia remained cancer-free. Johnny listened attentively, mentally noting every detail. "We'll need to keep a close eye on her for the next few months," Dr. Morrison explained. "The treatment was successful, but we want to make sure there's no recurrence. She'll need to come in for checkups every 2 weeks initially, then we'll gradually space them out if everything looks good." Johnny nodded, his expression serious. "Whatever she needs, Doctor. I want to make sure she has the best care possible." Dr. Morrison smiled, clearly impressed by Johnny's dedication. "She's lucky to have you in her corner, Mr. Depp. Not many children in her situation have this kind of support." As the doctor continued outlining the care plan, Johnny's mind began to wander. He thought about all the other children like Sonia, facing battles against illness without the resources or support they needed. An idea began to form in his mind. Once Dr. Morrison had finished and left the room, Johnny turned to Ms. Abigail, who had been quietly listening to the conversation. "Ms. Abigail," he began, his voice filled with determination, "I want to do more, not just for Sonia, but for other children like her." Ms. Abigail looked at him curiously. "What do you mean, Mr. Depp?" Johnny took a deep breath before continuing. "I want to set up a foundation, one that helps children with serious illnesses get the treatment they need, regardless of their financial situation. And I want to start by improving conditions at your orphanage. Better medical care, more resources, whatever you need." Ms. Abigail's eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Depp, that's incredibly generous, but are you sure? It's a huge undertaking." Johnny nodded firmly. "I'm sure. Sonia has shown me that there's so much more I could be doing with my resources. This is just the beginning." As they discussed the possibilities, Johnny felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that his life would return to its usual hectic pace, but a part of his heart would always belong to this small pirate who had taught him about true courage, faith, and the power of never giving up. Sonia slept peacefully, her pirate coin clutched in one hand, her other holding Johnny's. It was a powerful image of the unlikely but profound bond formed between a Hollywood star and a brave little girl who refused to give up. Johnny watched over her, his mind filled with plans for the future, not just for Sonia, but for all the children he hoped to help. He knew there would be challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them, inspired by the bravery of one small girl.